Hi, I'm Johanna Rothman, and this is a brief introduction to manage your job search. There's all kinds of problems with a job search. It's a really big, complex project, which tends to be overwhelming, mostly because you're often emotional about this job search, right? This is not somebody else's product. This is you as a product for possible employers, which means, at least when I have my emotions all over the place, it's very easy to allow them to interrupt me. It's very easy for me to feel badly about anything with the job search. It's really, it's a very hard thing. And another problem is you can't tell when this job search will end. And that's because you have to iterate until you get that offer for a job, an offer you want to accept. So I'm recommending you use a system that helps you manage your way through this project. Because a job search is a complex project, you need systems. And I recommend systems to break the work into small enough items, another system to track the work in your progress, and then to continually assess how well those systems work for you. And this way, you can prepare and succeed in your job search. So I really like to plan to iterate. I like to plan to iterate on almost every project I do, but if you plan to iterate how you look for a job, where you look for a job, on your resume, on your networking, on everything, you can create a system that says, I will plan to iterate. And agile and lean approaches support those kinds of systems. So I'm suggesting that you use agile and lean principles for frequent feedback and reflecting on what's working and what's not working. I also recommend you use personal Kanban. I really like personal Kanban to help me with my flow of the work. I use personal Kanban for everything because I see the next achievable steps to get to the next milestone, event, place, whatever it is you want to call it. And I also use personal Kanban to limit my WIP, my work in progress. I happen to use 1 week iterations, and I normally do Monday through Friday iterations because I can then use either Friday night or Sunday to plan for the next week. But you don't have to do that. You don't have to use an iteration at all. I just recommend it. I find it easier to assess where I am at the end of a week. That allows me to do the high value work. And I find that personal Kanban really works to help me be successful. So here's a sample personal Kanban board. You see the ready at the leftmost column, the in progress just next to it, the pen, which is where you corral all those in progress things that take more time than you expected, and then the done column. So here's a possible first week. You start off on Monday with your ready column. You're going to work on your LinkedIn About, which is that first paragraph at the top of your LinkedIn profile that says, here's everything about me. You also are going to review the most recent 5 years of experience and show your value. That's showing your value on every single line in your LinkedIn profile is very, very helpful. You're going to verify you have a useful picture on LinkedIn, and then check some connections to see who is missing on your LinkedIn profile. So this is your possible first week, right? That makes a reasonable guess for how you would start. At the end of the first week, you can see you're still working on, you still have something in progress, the previous 5 years of experience, and trying to show the value. However, you finished all of these. So this is a great first week. I'm also suggesting that you iterate in small chunks on anything larger than a few hours to a day's worth of work. So, for example, a resume is not one day's worth of work. It's often several days worth of work. You write a first draft, you get some review from people, you might do several other things while you're waiting for the review comments to come back to you. So you might request references, you might connect with more people, you might find some meetups to go to network with people. After that first draft, after you have all the review comments, now you would write draft 2. That would be a separate sticky. So here's what that looks like in a future week in your Kanban, right? You're going to do the first draft. You'll ask for resume after you do that, and then you'll have a second draft. Notice that you still have in progress work, and you still have the pen where you put these things where especially you're waiting for people. So if you ask for review for your resume, you might actually put the ask for review part into the pen after you send the emails or the messages in some way when you ask for review. As you keep going, you decide what to do next based on what you finished and what's important now. I have some guidelines, which is do not overcommit. Just keep everything going, right? Work in a sustainable pace. Write down all of the work you have to do and retrospect often to assess your progress. And the reason I want you to keep your to-dos small is that we all like to make progress, right? Every time you finish something, it has a little dopamine hit in your brain. So that progress thing is really important. The other reason is we are very terrible at multitasking. We can finish one thing, get it to a done point, and then even if we're waiting, such as waiting for review on our resume, we can start something else and finish it, right? But we're not in the middle of a very large piece of work. I find that this is the way I keep my spirits up. To keep my to-do small and to make progress. Then, if I do get an interrupting phone call or an email, it's fine, right? I don't get confused. It's easy for me to put down this particular piece of work. And I can make a lot of progress in not very much time. Now, there are plenty of ways to retrospect, and I have many of them in the book. But a very fast way that I really like is to do plus minus change. What did I do last week that I really enjoyed? What worked for me? What, might not have been so good? And what do I want to change? So this kind of a retrospective really works for me. You are probably going to find your next best job through loose connections, which means you have to network with everybody you can possibly tell, right? Don't try and limit your networking. Instead, try and expand your networking. One thing I find very interesting now, I am continuing to work with children of people I worked with years ago. I find this fascinating and really wonderful, wonderful benefit of multiple generations in the workforce. You might find that also if you're currently a child. You might work with adults who are colleagues of your parents. So don't be precious about who you network with. Network with everybody across organizations, across industries, across age groups. You cannot tell in advance who will help you get your next job. So there's two kinds of networking I really recommend. The first is the background networking that you have to do online and in person all the time. And then there's the targeted networking where you choose several, and I'm talking 20 or 25 companies, and you target people in those companies to network with. You need both kinds of networking for a successful job search. Start with your alumni listening groups. That might be schools, companies, and email lists you've been on forever. And don't forget professional groups and meetups. If you have not gone to a professional group meeting or meetup in a long time, it's time to go. All of those will help you with possibly informational interviews and warm connections to your target list. And that brings me to the target network. Make a list of 20 to 25 companies where you would like to work based on what you know now. And now think about how will you find a warm introduction to those companies? Who will help you be there? That's the list of people that you work. All for the idea of a warm introduction, an internal referral. Now, if you're like most of us, this is really hard. It's very personally challenging to go up to somebody and say, "Oh, I see you're working at company A. I would like to work there, and here's why." Explain why. And now you might need to do some research to actually figure out who your target companies are. But every time I've done this, I've actually had very, very good results. I meet a lot of people who say, "I sent out 300 resumes last month." Don't do that. That's a spray and pray approach to a job search. Instead, look for companies that share your personal and cultural values. Look for companies that have products that you are excited about. That way you can work your networking and you can show your value in a much more effective way than you could with just spray and pray. So there's a few tips I want to offer you to make your job search work. The first is finish every single to-do in 2 hours or less. That's called right sizing. And yes, it's a part of how we work in agile and lean projects. When you right size your to-dos, you can finish them in a couple of hours. That way, if you have just a little bit of time before you have an informational interview or before you go to a meetup, you still have time to finish something. I really like another tip, which is to finish this week's work in the time you have for your job search. If you are searching for a job as you are still working, you might only have 5 or 10 hours a week to devote to your job search. So make sure you only have a few to-dos and then finish those to-dos in the time that you have. And make your to-dos independent of each other. You might have to sequence them, but make them independent. Avoid these traps. You must keep going. If you want a new job, you plod along, you step along, you take that next step, you keep going. And remember that perfection is the enemy of the good. Nothing is going to be perfect. You will never have the perfect resume. You will never have the perfect LinkedIn profile. Do what you can, make it as good as possible, and don't beat yourself up. And make sure you don't have too much work in the in progress column. The more work you have in the in progress column, the less you're actually finishing. So finish one piece of work at a time and then go on to the next piece of work. I hope that you stay in touch with me. The book is Manage Your Job Search. You can find it on my website. It's also everywhere books are sold. I hope that you sign up for the Pragmatic Manager newsletter, and please do link with me on LinkedIn. And thank you for watching this little video.